We have a final case. We're getting right up against it, so we're not going to take a whole lot of time on this one. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. It is the postseason versus the NFC West, I believe, Ms. Rodriguez?
Correct, and I think there's been a shift in hierarchy due to the combination of multi-week injuries suffered by previous favorites, Rams and 49ers, to key players, and a increase in productivity and performance and excitability-ness in the Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. I am arguing today to the judge, the jury, and also against Greg, that the Seahawks and the Cardinals are going to be the premier teams in the NFC West down the stretch. And I also wonder, Judge Connie, if weeks 12 and 14 will even decide the NFC West when these two teams play each other. And again, in consideration of multi-week losses to previous favorite star players. Geno Smith is playing lights out. He had probably his best game. Greg and I were texting about it when I was watching.
Greg was talking about Geno Smith?
You know, it just was like one of those, you like set a match in and just like light it off and it just goes, right? And so, but he played with, and I even texted him, I said, I like to kind of keep a unbiased, like middle perspective when I'm looking at quarterbacks. And I felt alive watching Geno Smith play this last week. He was pressured so fast at nearly constantly on his dropbacks, but he showed no rattle. Good decisions, mostly sharp, really clean throws. The manipulation and the control he showed over the way that they go tempo, the way that they move around some of the formations in that offense. He's feeding the ball around to multiple receivers, 9th in EPA per play through 2 weeks, per dropback per 2 weeks, and 5th, despite that pressure, in success rate, 51.3%. And then there's Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense. And by the way, the Seahawks defense will keep growing up. The adjustments Mike McDonald made at halftime against New England, I thought were really impressive. They basically took away the only way they were getting gashed and then said, all right, you're going to run the ball against us. We understand that, but we're going to take away your passing game. And then by moving some different assignments around. And then Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals, you know, I don't know that the defense will sustain what it did against a very depleted Rams team, but this offense is built not just to win right now, but also to win in November and December and January and February because of all the different ways that they can run the ball and the way that Kyler Murray can create on the run. I've not seen him play like this in person yet. And he is alive in Drew Petzing's offense. Drew Petzing calls a smart game. He understands how to attack defenses. And they're moving this heavy personnel run game all around the line in terms of their attack points on these defenders. Yes, the Rams defensive line is terrible, and it showed in this game, but they can do this to opponents. We have seen this down the back half of last season, and they came out swinging. I think that these two teams are taking over as the premier teams in the NFC West this year alone. And Kyler is 3rd in EPA per dropback in the NFL, 0.40. And then success percentage, he's also 3rd, 54.7 success rate on passing plays. I mean, that's just outstanding. Through 2 games, I understand, but the way that these guys play is sustainable.
Your Honor, the prosecutor has a case of having too much dip on her chip. I mean, she said February.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear.
February for these Arizona Cardinals.
Let me be clear. You can.
She said it. It's in the court.
All right, order. My God.
Let me be clear. So we're not misleading here. Running the ball in that fashion is what wins you games in February.
The only way you can play in February is if you're going to make the Super Bowl. And I can understand saying that the Seahawks are a real postseason threat. I agreed with that before the season even started. But to essentially replace the 49ers with the Cardinals is a step too far. This defense is very shorthanded up front and on the back end. 2 very important parts of your defense, I would say, among the least talented defenses in the entire NFL. Totally agree that they could be a sneaky playoff contender, but that doesn't mean that the 49ers are going to fall apart. Despite all the injuries for the 49ers, may I present honor some players still on the field for the 49ers.
Sure.
Brandon Ayuk, 2nd team All-Pro last year. Juwan Jennings, sneaky great wide receiver in terms of blocking. Trent Williams, the best tackle on the planet. All these players would be better than just about anyone on the Cardinals except for Kyler Murray. Hey, how about the quarterback who led the #1 EPA per play offense in the NFL last year and delivered series after series in the freaking Super Bowl when he needed to try to win the Super Bowl. That's Brock Purdy. He's still around. George Kittle, Nick Bosa, like Fred Warner. These are all pros after all pros. This team has had injuries before, Charvarius Ward, and they have a great coaching staff, including Kyle Shanahan. I hear you on the whole Seahawks. I even like
So
Cardinals
you'll acquiesce the Seahawks, but not the Cardinals.
But it says you even says the real postseason threats. I would even go with Seahawks, Cardinals, and 49ers are real postseason threats.
I would agree with that.
But wording is important in the
It
courtroom, and I think it was just a little too loose, especially when that February word came out.
Okay.
The February word that was misinterpreted by my opponent here, by the way.
I'll allow it. I will allow it.
They've dealt with injuries, yeah, but they've not dealt with Achilles tendonitis for their star player. That's all I'm saying. That's a sketchy one.
All right. Well, I think the Cardinals and the Seahawks, they are for sure real threats in the division, partially because they are healthy right now. The Rams have just been obliterated with injuries. This is already Sean McVay's first time starting 0-2. Probably 0-3 because they're playing the Niners this week, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened. San Francisco feels a little bit off, but I would like to attribute that to the injuries. Jordan Mason has done an admirable job filling in for Christian McCaffrey, but just obviously not the same. The defense will still keep them in games, but maybe they're not the threat that we thought they were. But I'm just saying, as where we stand right now after 2 weeks, the Seahawks, though, that defense looks completely different from last season. They are so aggressive. They're flying to the ball. Like you said, those halftime adjustments were insane. That defensive line is so good when they are healthy. They are absolutely stacked with talent. And then Geno Smith, he is supremely underrated, Greg. And
at this point, it's not even underrated.
Well,
everyone
not in this room, not in this courtroom. The Cardinals are absolutely electric with Kyler Murray at this point, and I haven't seen him play this well in years and years. Watching that game on Sunday, he looked so good. The offense was insane the way it moved so well. It reminded me of some of those games where Kyler Murray would pull out like a Hail Mary at this, like right at the end. I feel like it was like, how many years ago? It was before
against the Bills, who he also looked good against in week 1.
Yes. The defense is a potential weak spot, though, for the Cardinals. That's where I start to worry. But they are all over the place in week 2, making plays against the Rams when you go back and watch the film. So maybe Gannon has them cooking and can elevate the ceiling on them. But we, the jury and the judge, in the case of the postseason versus the NFC West, we find the Cardinals and Seahawks not guilty of rising to the top of the division. And it is because I am split with the Cardinals and the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks will rise up in the division, but I still believe in the Niners. So I think it'll end up being somewhere between the Seahawks and the Niners up top, and then Cardinals and Rams.
Can't truly argue with the honorable judge and respected jury.
That is correct
there.
In this courtroom.
Yeah, that the 49ers are always dangerous, even when you think they're not. Right. They are always dangerous. I 100% agree with that. I just think they're in a bit of uncharted territory with the amount of time that some of these players, some of the situation, particularly with stars, might be able to just hinder their season, delay their progress a little bit. You catch momentum at the right time in this league. That's important. And by the way, the Cardinals
just take that out.
The Cardinals, the way that they were I technically still won this because you argued against yourself. So
it's a fair point.
So the Cardinals, the way that they're able to run the ball, the multiplicity with the way they're able to run the ball, that's going to just smother people. That's reminiscent of the Kyle Shanahan suffocation 49ers. That's just darkness right there. Like that's going to take this team to the postseason, regardless of what they're it does not matter how your defenses if you could play keep away from the other side, which is what they almost did to the Bills and what they will continue to try to do to opponents down the stretch.
I do remember that 49ers team from a couple of years ago, 2021, that started 3-5.
Oh.
And they were a dropped interception in the NFC Championship game against the Rams from making the Super Bowl that year and having a real chance to win it. I think of their team last year that lost a couple games in the middle of the season in a row. Granted, they had a little cushion in terms of their record at that point, but they lost a couple games in a row when they had injuries.
Their offensive line
always
is also struggling outside of Trent. Like, I'm wondering if we're going to see more of these bad games from Brock Purdy too.
Yeah, it might have been a Brian Flores thing. They'll have a much better matchup this week against the Rams. Although the Rams always find a way to play them close. This will be a challenge.